Welcome back to In with Denoux.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to In with Denoux featuring Jordan Shannon. You guys are getting a mix-up as we have Gio in the mix here, and now we have Jordan back. So we're kind of getting used to this new flow. Hopefully the three of us will be on together here and there as well. But thank you for hanging in there with us as we kind of figure out the new flow. And we're still figuring out. We're still not sure. We're going to do an episode every week, every other week. Is Gio going to be permanent? I'm kind of talking to him to see how permanent he wants to be. And so I'm hoping to have a plan for the new year to share with you guys. I'll talk to Jordan, talk to Gio, and kind of have more of a plan going forward for the podcast. But guys, we love you. We really genuinely appreciate, the support that we've gotten, and we really do hope that we can continue to grow. It's been a really, really cool journey for me personally. And it's been, honestly, for some people doing podcasts, especially people that have established big podcasts now, I'm sure it would sound ridiculous, but it's been so big to me to have, a handful to a dozen of people reach out to ask about how to read the Bible, to ask, about, why it's not real for them, or why is it boring for them. Those are some of the goals that I've prayed about for this podcast, is to be able to actually help people move closer to God, on top of just having fun and laughing and talking about sports, talking about TV shows, telling funny stories. And so that's what we're going to do a little bit today. We've had a lot of spiritual content, which has been super, super fun. We went through the book of Nehemiah, and I will have a bonus episode of Nehemiah. It might already be out, so if it is, go ahead and check it out. But we went through the book of Nehemiah. Gio and I have been going through the creation story, so we'll have part 3 of that next week, and Jordan may jump on with us for that. And then we're going to be doing the book of Jonah as well in the next handful of weeks here. So yeah, we just have appreciated all the support that we've gotten. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share on your socials if you're willing to do so, and we hope that this can grow. And if you're watching on YouTube, have a comment in the comment section. Commenting below helps us grow, which I've learned and started to use that phrase that I copied from someone else. So definitely comment below. But today, Jordan and I are just going to have some fun talking about some college football, as there is a lot going on, and for our teams and a lot of different teams. So Jordan's got his Florida swag on. Our teams were kind of nemesis off the field, in the last couple of weeks, going after the same coach. So how you feeling, man? LSU gets Lane Kiffin. If you don't know who Lane Kiffin is, if you're not a sports fan, he's the ultimate troll person. He's, has this boisterous personality. He's a offensive genius kind of guy. And Florida was going after him. LSU was going after him. Ole Miss was going after him. Apparently UCLA was going after him, which I learned in his press conference with LSU. And Florida gets John Summerall, who I was actually super high on. I was wanting LSU to get him if they didn't get Lane Kiffin. So how you feeling, man? You happy, mad, sad?
Yeah, man, it's been a while. Well, I'll say this. I feel relieved that the news part and the hype around the coaching searches are over, because now we all know who's ended up where, and now it's time to focus on those things. But for the last, month, I felt like I've been glued to Twitter.
Yeah,
kind of trying to figure out what news is dropping. If you follow the Gators or you follow just college football, you know that Florida fired their head coach back in I believe mid-September or sorry, late September, and have been on the search for quite some time. And LSU fired theirs, I want to say mid-October, something like that.
Something like that.
It was they have it was some Brian Kelly. I was mad because and I told Chase about this. I was like, when Florida opened up, they were clearly the number 1 job on the market, and there's a lot of ties to getting Lane Kiffin. And I was like, there's nobody that's gonna take it from us. It was basically Florida's to lose. And then LSU became available, and I told my wife, I'm like, dang it. Because I knew, and every Gator fan I know knows that LSU right now is a better job than Florida. It just is. They just recruiting wise, you don't have to battle with 2 other schools for your in-state talent. You have an ease of pipeline in the Southeast. They have a rich history. They have a very recent Heisman winner within the last two Heisman winners within the last decade, which is really rare. So looking back at it, I'm just like, that was the one school I was nervous about taking them.
Yeah.
And I was bummed. I was bummed when we found out we didn't get him, especially because a lot of Gator fandom, myself included, was just kind of like, we wanted someone with an offensive mind. Billy Napier's offense at Florida for the past 4 years had been, gosh, in the lower half of the 128th of the 120 school. Like it was
which is crazy.
He was like always 60, which is so frustrating because he was touted as like this offensive like genius. So we wanted someone who just was like going to bring us back, who's going to score points, who's going to troll. And Lane Kiffin was someone we had our sights set on for a while.
Yeah.
But what I found out, and I don't know if you saw this, but it found out that Lane did not like Scott Strickland, our AD, which joined the club. No Gator fan like Scott Strickland right now, especially.
Yeah. Yep.
But I listened to John Sumrall's introductory press conference, and I'll be honest, he won me over. The way he talks, the way he preps, I was like, you know what? We probably got a real blessing in disguise. But I also don't get upset with Gator fans who are disappointed that we didn't get Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Considering the head start we had on him. But I'll say this, man, the season didn't go the way we wanted. We finished 4-8. You know, but we finished probably having our most impressive win over our rival, one of our biggest rivals in Florida State. So I'm like, you know what? We got a good coach. We were able to beat the Seminoles. That's something.
Yeah.
It did not go nowhere
kept
near
them from going
to,
Yeah. Kept them from going to a bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, kept them from going to a bowl. So I'm like, you know what? That's something. It's again like it was a trash season, still bad. Like we're not going bowling either.
Yeah.
But you know, part of what people hate about Scott Strickland or don't like about him is the fact that if we had fired Billy Napier last year, we probably would have gotten Lane Kiffin.
Absolutely.
Like if we had just said like, you know what, even though he beat LSU and Ole Miss last year, this is off the rails and we don't know. But obviously hindsight is 2020 because like last year we should have speculated that he wasn't going to right the ship when he lost to Georgia and Texas. He lost to Georgia 1 week and then went to Texas and got blown out. So looking at that, those should have been things that we probably said, hey, get rid of him. But Scott Strickland was like, no, I'm going to extend him.
Man.
And so that was probably our biggest mistake. And then coming into this season, I figured it was a lost season once we lost to USF. I was like, at that point, I'll be shocked if we get, you know, 7 or 8 wins. And apparently I should have been shocked if we got 5 wins because based on after that loss, it was just all downhill after that. But I'm excited for John Sumrall. I am.
Yeah.
He made a hire today for a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, from Kentucky, right? The guy from Kentucky.
Yeah. Which if you watch the Florida Kentucky games of the last 5 years, defensively Kentucky has always been sound, and they have torched us and shredded us in terms of just stopped our offense, stopped any momentum. They played Anthony Richardson very well. They played Graham Mertz very well. Like it was just like no, Kentucky is like their defense is legit. So to get that defensive coordinator, I was like, all right, I like that pick. I'll be curious to see who he gets as offensive coordinator. I have a few thoughts around like who I want for OC, but I'm more so interested in, before we get into all that, I'm curious about you. Y'all landed Lane Kiffin, and you know, like, how did you feel about his whole exit from Ole Miss? Did you see him get on the plane in Oxford and like the videos of it?
Yeah, I did. Well, before I jump in, I will say, so just to wrap up what you were talking about. So I'd be lying if I said like I knew who the Kentucky defensive coordinator was. I didn't know. But when I did look, because at first glance, I was like, that's kind of interesting. Like Kentucky's not that good, you know. And I kind of looked into it and I was like, okay, like he's pretty like well respected. So it was like a good, because bro, what I was worried about, because there was rumors which probably didn't get hot enough to make it to Florida news cycles, but there was some conversations about, so John Sumrall really wanted Blake Baker from LSU to bring with him to Florida as his DC. And I think that like if there was people saying that like if he wasn't retained by Lane Kiffin, that could be what happened. But Lane Kiffin immediately said he wanted to retain Blake Baker. But Blake Baker also just interviewed for the Tulane opening today and
So he's
apparently
probably
killed it.
looking to go.
But
he's looking to go head coach. Gotcha.
Well, it's not for sure because so he played at Tulane, which I think people don't know. He's from Louisiana. His wife's from Baton Rouge, which is a big reason why he came back after they fired him when Brian Kelly first got to Baton Rouge, because he was our linebackers coach under Ed Orgeron the last few years under Ed Orgeron. And so he interviewed for Tulane, but LSU is actively trying to retain Blake Baker. So I think he's trying to decide, like, do I want to go the John Summerall route, right, where he was at Troy, then at Tulane, then jumped to Florida, right? Or, there's some pretty heavy examples of, like, going straight from, like, a big-time DC, like Kirby Smart, right? He went straight from being a big-time DC for a handful of years to jumping to Georgia. You have Dan Lanning, obviously did the same thing. And then
right.
You also have even Marcus Freeman, right, was the defensive coordinator, and then they just promoted him within. So I think like Blake Baker's trying to decide, like, do I want to, if I'm offered this job, like, do I want to go ahead and just jump there and then maybe go to another school, then jump to a big school, or do I want to stay at LSU and this year actually have like a balance, right? Because this year it was like the defense was unbelievable and he had no support offensively. It was kind of the flip of a couple years ago when LSU had Jaden Daniels and the offense was unbelievable, but they were giving up like 40 points a game. It was like ridiculous. And this season, it was the complete inverse. Like, I think the game against Oklahoma was a microcosm of the entire season and why Lane Kiffin was so needed. Like, they had to get him, is that you had an unbelievable defensive performance. It was honestly a lot like the Florida game, except we lost. Like, we had 3 interceptions.
It was like 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So we had 5 against Florida, but 3 against Oklahoma. And literally it was just 2 big plays that were given up. And that was the game. But the reason, in my opinion, I don't know this for a fact, but in my opinion, I felt like those big plays were given up because the defense was pressing, because they knew they had to make something happen or they were not going to win. Like, I feel like they were doing press man, like they were trying to jump routes, like, and then if you do that, you're going to get beat sometimes for big plays. But I really do think that Blake Baker was like, if we don't get a pick 6 or something, because we got a pick and ran it to the 5-yard line, and then we throw an interception the next play. Like the defense was like, what do we have to do, kind of thing. And so I really do feel like they were pressing to try to get another pick, another, fumble or something like that, and they gave up the big play. So I really even think those 2 big plays weren't even really on the defense. It was like forced,
Yeah.
But to answer your question,
it's a high risk, high reward. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, man, it's crazy. I feel like I could say so much because I've been listening to, a lot of LSU content and guys that have, inside stuff, and I'm learning a lot still, because I will say, I think that some of Florida's reporters, I think, kind of did the university a disservice by continuing to, like, they just kept saying, like, it's a done deal. Like, Lane Kiffin's coming to Florida. And it was just very interesting to listen to LSU side, because LSU's main, like, guys like that do a lot of the reporting never said it was a done deal, like, for LSU. But they also were like, it is not a done deal for Florida. And something that one of the main guys I listened to, Matt Moscona, when he brought this up, I was like, oh, you know what? I was like, that's actually kind of true. Is he was saying, guys, like, the only people saying it's a done deal for Florida is Florida reporters, which is very odd. Like, the national media is, like, pointing towards LSU, like, So it was just a very weird, like, it was a very weird thing. I was like, why is Florida, like, so confident? And what I did hear is that before Brian Kelly was fired, someone was saying, I can't remember what it's called, but there's this document that can be signed that's not, like, binding, but it's kind of like a verbal agreement, like, I'm going to come here.
The MOU?
Yes, MOU, exactly.
Yeah.
And so some people were saying,
understanding.
Yes, exactly. So some people think that Kiffin had that with Florida. Now, they weren't saying for sure, but they were saying, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But then once Brian Kelly was fired, and the coaches that he's so close with, especially Nick Saban, were pointing to him to LSU. Like, Nick Saban, it's no secret he has an affinity for LSU. Right, I think in his deep deep, deep down in his heart, someone said this today, and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. Like Nick Saban, I think, feels indebted to LSU as LSU feels indebted to him. Like I think, we jump started his career, but really he jump started LSU of like building a fence around Louisiana, understanding. Because something you were saying before is that I'm not from Louisiana, but I feel like because my dad's from there and obviously I'm a huge fan and I feel like I'm plugged into the state and know what's going on, is that it's just a unique place for college football because, like you said about Florida, how there's University of Miami, and there's Florida State, and even like UCF and USF now, which have gotten to a point where they might pluck one guy or two guys that Florida might have taken, or whatever. Not only that, like obviously LSU is the only big time school in the state, but also like because of that, not just player wise, but like everyone is invested into LSU. Like, there's all these different allegiances around Florida, and I think Florida probably has the biggest fan base of those three schools, if I had to guess. But with
Probably,
LSU,
yeah.
like the economy changes based on how LSU football does. Like, it's just everything. Like everyone is invested in that program being good. Everyone in the state, like the governor included, which we saw in the search.
And
So
that's what made me mad too, because I was like, man, like y'all are struggling to not want to pay Brian Kelly his full buyout. What you talking about? And then you know what they did? They paid it, and they still can afford Lane. I'm like, man, them pockets are deep.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
Florida like Florida, we
yeah,
are cheap.
and I
I'm
understand.
like,
Yeah, man. I understand the misconception because someone said it best as they were like, there's a difference between not wanting to play Brian Kelly and can't play Brian Kelly. And that's what it was. Is that people were like, LSU can't even pay Brian Kelly. It's like, no, it's just that they're trying to, like any school, I think they don't want to pay him. They want to pay him as little as possible. And I think, they didn't
right.
handle that 100% great. But I think they kind of got a point where like, all right, like, we just need to show everybody we are capable of this, because we don't want to lose Lane Kiffin because there's this perception that we're not going to be able to pay him, or whatever. And so I did also learn that there was a lot of big time boosters for LSU that, when Brian Kelly came, I'm not going to say Brian Kelly was checked out. I actually think the stuff said about Brian Kelly's getting to a little bit of a point where it's like, all right, like he's not like Satan,
Yeah.
y'all. Like, like he clearly was like older in life. I think the job got too much for him, to be honest, like at this stage of life. And I do think a part of him checked out, and I'm not making an excuse for him, but I like, there were some players that, came into his defense that said like, he treated me great, like, whatever. So I'm like, he wasn't just this terrible human being, to everyone. I
Right.
think he rubbed people the wrong way. And I do think there was times where he was more lazy than probably his younger self would have been, or whatever. But I learned that he just didn't engage some of the big time boosters. And so they were just kind of like, why would I give money to this guy? And now that he's gone, they're back. And like, they're like, we want our program back, kind of thing.
Yeah. It seems
So
like almost like that he felt, because the last three coaches won national titles at LSU, I think he felt entitled to, like, this is LSU, it shouldn't be that hard. And to be completely honest, I don't think it was that hard. I do think there were some detail related things that didn't get checked out. Like obviously this year offense wise was just rough. Like, right, but
yeah,
defense
yeah,
was phenomenal.
yeah,
Right? Like, and
yep,
so, like, I honestly think if Brian Kelly maybe got a better coordinator on offense, or just got a better scheme going on offense, next year probably could have made a deep playoff run, or in the next couple of years, they would have probably had a national title.
yeah,
But I do think he didn't want to pay attention to those details anymore.
yeah,
The man
yep.
was just like there was reports of him playing golf and stuff, and I'm thinking, Brian, you can play golf in Florida. Like, there's a lot of courses out there.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's interesting because there was a lot of reports, and even like the golf club that he was a part of was like came out and said like, yeah, that's not true. Like he was here, but he wasn't here as much as people are saying. But
Mm.
I honestly think that he wasn't fully engaged. And you could see like he, didn't like sometimes like would say the wrong names of his players. Like it was just very clear that he wasn't fully engaged. And I also think someone snipped this, and I was like, man, like the people, this is what I mean by people, everyone is invested in the football program there. Because I don't live there, so like I would have never thought of this. But when I saw this, I was like, wow, like one, for people to catch this, you can see how much it means to them, like the program, but also like I was just like, yeah, I would have never caught that. So they brought up a press conference from Brian Kelly from this season. So like he's been there for 4 or 5 years, right? And he was talking about like the fan base and just LSU in general, and he kept saying they. Like he was like, LSU they. And then they
Mm,
showed Lane Kiffin today in his press conference, and he was like, at our program here at LSU, we will. It was
yeah,
like our. And I think like
yeah,
it was as simple as that, bro. Like it wasn't about Brian Kelly being from Boston and not Louisiana. It was just, I think he thought, I'm going to come and get what LSU can give to me instead of like adding to this rich, tradition and program or whatever. I think he just saw,
yeah.
like you were
He
saying, like
didn't
I think he
appreciate
saw
it.
like
Yeah,
an easy national title, I think is what he saw. And
yeah,
he didn't think he would have
yeah.
to, like when people say it is easier to recruit in Louisiana because you have New Orleans right there, you have U High, which is literally on LSU's campus, like, you have Texas right there, like is easier, but that doesn't mean you don't have to work hard for it, because
Right.
there's still Texas A&M, there's still Alabama, like
There's Ole
all
Miss,
trying,
there's Auburn,
you
there's
know,
Alabama.
yeah,
There's a lot of there's Arkansas. There's a lot of SEC schools just around.
yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah.
And so I
And
think he just
credit
thought it was
to
going to be like
yeah.
snap of the finger and they're all going to come.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think with any SEC school, you gotta embrace the culture of that school to like really be successful. I think the same way that you felt towards Brian Kelly, we felt towards Billy Napier. Billy Napier, like you never got the sense that he liked being a Gator or he loved being a Gator. You would see him every Saturday. He wear black, never wore blue, never wore
mm,
white, never wore the school colors, and just never had a good feel for the game. Now, the players loved him, so he
yeah,
seemed like a guy
yeah,
that like people really cared about. And the players, I have not found a player that ever questioned their connection or loyalty to him. So,
yeah,
so with that being said, like I'm like, sounds like a good dude. There was this stuff that he did that rubbed the fans the wrong way, even in his press
yeah,
conferences. Like it's yeah, he I just remember I think it was it the USF game? I'm trying to remember which one exactly it was, but in one of those press conferences, I remember he threw a player under he didn't say the
mm,
player by name, but he like just basically like threw a shot out like at like yeah, we got guys that are making mistakes and they can't be making those mistakes, and
yeah,
like didn't really look at and then would also give the same kind of generic answers of like, yeah, we got to fix this. We got to fix that. We got to do better each week, like every single week of doing that, to the point where I'm like, all right, are things going to actually get better? You're just telling
yeah,
us what we want
yeah,
to hear, but things are not improving. Like, we lost at USF and then we would go on the road and it's like, okay, DJ's going to play better. DJ throws 5 picks and you let him throw 5 picks. It's like, okay, that's a problem. Like, let's go to Miami. What's going to happen? DJ only has 64 yards of offense of passing yards for the entire game.
yeah,
DJ, I was
yeah,
like, what is going on, Billy? And it was so frustrating. Like it's like if you had just hired an OC like you said you were supposed to do, like you were said you were going to do. I genuinely think we're talking about a team that is 8-4 or 9-3 as opposed to being 4-8.
yeah,
It was
yeah, I agree with that.
so frustrating watching him. Like I'm like, yeah, this is right. This has gone its course. So everybody knew Billy Napier was going to get fired, but it's just kind of like frustrating because I think in our heart of hearts we wanted him to do well. It just felt like he didn't. Even now to this day, fans we're bitter about it. I know it because I see it on the post. He has still not addressed the nation. Like you know,
Yeah, I saw
Brian
that
Kelly.
actually.
Brian Kelly sent something to LSU. Like he said,
Yeah,
thank you, Baton Rouge, and
yeah,
thank you to community. Billy Napier hasn't done one thing like that.
that's
He has not
crazy, bro.
addressed us. And it's like, and I'm like, wow, like there's no love, no love lost
Yeah,
with that
that's
man.
wild. That's wild,
It's
bro.
it's
And
it's
it's
just a
crazy
reminder, like,
because
yeah, we need to start over.
even if someone does it, because like to be honest, like I don't really think Brian Kelly cares that much, but they have PR teams, like Brian Kelly didn't write that, you know what I'm saying? Or I mean, maybe he did, but I highly
That's
doubt it.
right.
So it's crazy because it's like he has to be being advised to do it, and then he actively being like, no, because there's no way someone on a PR team would be like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy, you know?
And not only that, right? Like, not only has he done that, he was spotted like maybe 2 weeks later at
At
UGA.
Georgia, yeah, I saw
At
that.
Georgia, and I know he worked with Kirby. He's friends with Kirby. Like I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
know that they worked together at Alabama, but it's like, bro, really? Like,
yeah.
and I also know he's from Georgia. I literally posted on Facebook. I think I posted this like after the USF game. I was like, have we ever considered that Billy Napier is a saboteur hired by Florida State or Georgia, like secretly?
That's funny.
And just seeing that report of him being at a UGA practice, I'm like, my conspiracy theory might be holding up. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening here?
Yeah. So, okay, I don't think I actually answered your question about how I feel about Lane Kiffin. So, it's very
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. It's very, very interesting. Before I say anything, I'm happy to have Lane Kiffin. Like, I feel like some of the things I'm going to say might sound contrary to that. I'm happy to have Lane Kiffin. Like, as an LSU fan, I'm happy to have him because I do think he is the style of coach we needed, especially if we're able to keep Blake Baker as the defensive coordinator, because Lane Kiffin is like rag to riches with offense. Like he literally took Trinidad Chambliss, who's like bro, this was crazy when I saw this. I think he was ranked like 600 something player in the portal last year. Like not like of all the players in the nation, of the players in the portal, he was ranked like 600 something. And he saw something in him and made him into a Heisman candidate. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So it feels
Yeah.
nice to like, I'm not worried about quarterback. Like what's crazy is we have one scholarship quarterback on our roster that will be there next year. Like Garrett Nussmeier is about to graduate and he's hurt right now.
That's right.
But then also the other guy we had, I really don't know he took a leave from the team and everyone kind of assumed he's in the portal, but he's hasn't announced he's going to the portal, but he's not with the team right now. So we literally have Michael Van Buren, and if he got hurt, we have a walk-on, and we have a guy who played quarterback in high school who plays running back / receiver for us. Like if Michael Van Buren were to get hurt. So I'm happy to have Lane Kiffin because we need quarterbacks. Like we're going to have to get like 2 or 3 probably from the portal. We don't even have one committed for this upcoming class either. So it's like, well, like the cupboard is bare at quarterback, like completely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because today, like Lane Kiffin's first official tweet as a LSU coach, right, was like this morning he was like, exhale, like have a blessed Monday. And then it said like go Tigers, but then below it had a Trinidad and Tobago flag. So everyone's like, he's trying to get Trinidad to come to LSU.
No, that is so cool.
So I was like, if anything, the Lane Kiffin era is gonna be fun. That's all I know.
Yeah,
like it may burn, it may go down in shambles, but it's gonna be fun along the way. So, bro, the way that I
text you,
sorry, go ahead.
I was
Go
gonna say
ahead.
my bad. I was like, I text you. I was like, I'm so glad Florida doesn't play LSU next year.
I kind of wish we did. It would be interesting. You know what's crazy though is that LSU plays at Ole Miss again. Like we played there this year, but with the new schedule, some of the scheduling got messed up where like you might have to play 2 away, whatever. So we play at Ole Miss and at Tennessee, where they hate him there too.
That's funny.
So I'm like, man, so bro, what it feels like is like what I literally thought of being a Miami Heat fan. I was like, it feels a little bit like when LeBron came to Miami. And I'm not saying Lane Kiffin's LeBron, but there are some similarities to where everyone wanted LeBron. LeBron, though, had never won a championship. And Lane Kiffin has, like, I think people forget that. LeBron had not won a championship.
True. LeBron did not have a championship before Miami.
But he was the best free agent available, obviously. And everybody wanted Lane Kiffin. And he hasn't won a championship. So I do have some reservations of, like, his I'm excited. I think that he will like bring an LSU offense back. I think that like especially with the money they're providing him, like we're gonna have a roster. And we do have to rebuild a roster. So I'm not expecting like year 1 championship. Like I think we should be competing for the playoff next year for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think it's going to take a little time like it would with any other coach, just like it did with Brian Kelly or anybody else. But I do think because of how good he is in the portal, I do think that they like maybe like if they did compete for a national championship next year, I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm not necessarily expecting it right away. But I do
Yeah.
think like last year, I think his full roster last year at Ole Miss was better than his roster this year. And that's like
Yeah.
kind of what makes me
Especially on the
excited.
defensive side. Especially on the
Exactly.
defensive side. Like
So
I remember thinking like last year should have won a lot more games.
So exactly. That's why I'm like, I have high hope. Like, I think like his team this year is what gives you hope, right? Like he took this team that nobody thought was going to compete, and they're 11-1, and their only loss was to Georgia, and they were ahead by 9 going into the fourth quarter of that game. So that's what you look at, and you're like, man, he did that at Ole Miss, and you're gonna have like, the recruiting. So just to put in perspective, because I know like, I mean, Ole Miss fans aren't gonna watch this, like whatever, but Ole Miss fans are gonna claim like he could have done everything that he's going to do at LSU at Ole Miss. But just put it in perspective, his entire time at Ole Miss, the highest recruiting class he had was his current, the one, well, not anymore because they've already had like 4 or 5 decommitments, but was number 17. And that was the highest he had ever had in his 6 years. There was 17.
Crazy.
Now, before anyone
Crazy.
knew Lane was going to LSU, after Brian Kelly got fired, they had one decommitment from the time Brian Kelly got fired up till yesterday, and they were ranked 12th with all the chaos that was going on, like with the governor stuff, with like they can't pay Brian Kelly, and we were at 12, sitting at 12, you know? And I'm like, that was before you had Lane Kiffin, before, during all the fiasco with the governor. And it's like, that's kind of what we mean by like you can fall into a top 10 recruiting class at LSU if you just put in the
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so,
It just takes a little bit of work, but you could be having a top 10 recruiting class, a top 3 SEC class. Like it's if you do a little bit of work, it'll go a long way at LSU. And honestly, you can say the same at Florida too, because I'm like
yeah.
looking back, like Florida's recruiting class, I didn't even think about that. Like Billy Napier's classes were around like 13th. I think the highest he had was 9th, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So Billy Napier like applied a little bit of work and was actually able to get some really solid classes together. And even this class coming up is, I believe, 13th, like right behind LSU. And we just had our first decommitment like yesterday, and I'm like, if John Sumrall can retain this roster and flip some guys, oh my goodness, like we could talk about a 9-win team next year,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, that side of Lane Kiffin is what excites you as an LSU fan. It's like, man, this year, this team, like everyone looked at this roster preseason was like, they're going to be like 500 or like 7-5, 8-4,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And they were 11-1. So that's what excites you. Now, the part where you're like, we'll see is that, like we just said, last year, his roster was better and they lost to Kentucky and they lost to an LSU team that they were better than. They lost, I can't remember what their third loss, but they lost 2-3 games they had no business losing. Now, granted, they won some great games too. So it's kind of like, you see what it could be under him, right? Like he's 11-1 with a team that had no business being 11-1. And now he's going to a place that is going to have better recruits, better resources, bigger stadium,
Yeah.
all that. So I think I see like if he continues to mature as a coach, and I think it was kind of cool. He stated, I think I haven't paid super close attention to Lane Kiffin until the last few months. And I always kind of looked at him as like a jerk and, a narcissist. And I think a lot of coaches are narcissists. Like I think in some ways that comes with the territory, but
kind of got to be one.
Yeah. And certainly
gotta
he
feel
could have.
yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and certainly he could have probably handled, the leaving of Ole Miss coming LSU better. But at the same time, I do think the schedule of everything made it really, really difficult. Like he was kind of between a rock and a hard place. But I do think if he could go back, he probably would have done a few things differently, or whatever. But listening to him at the press conference, something that I was like, that's like some good perspective from him is that he was talking about how he has a very unique journey. And he even said, like, he was like, I've been a head coach at 6 different places and I'm 50 years old. And he's like, I don't know if anyone's done that. And he was like, and I'm not saying that as a good thing. He was like, a lot of those places I didn't leave because I wanted to. I was fired, or I left, in a way that was maybe not the best. But it was just this perspective of him saying, like, I feel like all of those things have prepared me, like, for this job. And he was talking about how, his biggest mentors are Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. And he was saying how, like, that Pete Carroll was about 50 years old when he became the coach at USC. And he was like, Nick Saban was 55 when he became the coach of Alabama. And he was like, I'm 50 years old. So he's like, I feel like I'm just now getting into where I could be the best coach that I've ever been. Like, that was kind of what he was saying. And he looked at this job as like USC for Pete Carroll or Alabama for Nick Saban. And I was like, I think that's good perspective. And, any coach, you hope it works for your team, right? But I really do think he could, if he brings that work at, and I love that he was already in the building, like calling, like he got off the plane and went straight to sports ops, like at LSU, and started calling recruits. Like the number one recruit in the entire country is at U High, which is like attached to LSU. And like Lamar Brown was like in his office like an hour after he landed in Baton Rouge, making sure he's locked in, like he's already committed, but like making sure he's locked in, like or whatever. So you kind of see like, okay, if he keeps that work ethic and makes good hires, and just runs a great offense and keeps a good defensive staff, like maybe he could build, I think it's going to be hard to build dynasties anymore with a 12-team playoff. It's going to be so hard to win back-to-back or 3 in 5 years. Like, I think that's going to be really hard. But who knows, like if you are at the right place, and he's obviously a special offensive mind, and LSU's always going to be able to get defensive talent and skill players, So I'm optimistic, but I think like I'm not like some LSU fans that are like, the national championship comes through Baton Rouge now. I'm like, all right, let's chill, let's play a game first,
I mean, if I was an LSU fan, like there's some optimism I would have about that. Like honestly, because of the level playing field. Like honestly, even this year, like I mean, the only team that there's not really a lot of teams that I feel like are far above the crowd. Like Ohio State, I think is good, but I don't think that they're gonna go undefeated. I think that they are probably going to lose a game in the playoff. Lose one of the games in the playoff. I think Georgia could beat Ohio State. I think Georgia could beat Indiana. I think Georgia could beat anybody in the playoff, honestly.
Yeah.
I think Texas A&M could put up a challenge against a lot of these teams. The only team, funny enough, I don't feel confident about is well, there's two. Indiana and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't feel the confidence about both those teams. It's not because they're not good teams. They're great teams. But I'm like, do you have the depth to play? Like, okay, you got to play maybe Ohio State first round, or play a Oklahoma first round. Okay, beat Oklahoma. Then in your quarterfinal round, you'll probably have to play a Notre Dame. Okay, after you get past the Notre Dame, then you got to play a Georgia. If you beat Georgia, now you got to play at Ohio State. Like I don't see Indiana or Ole Miss being able to survive that 4-game stretch.
Yeah. I agree.
Now the truth is, it's hard for really any team to survive a stretch like that. Like Ohio State probably couldn't survive a stretch like that. Georgia probably couldn't survive a stretch like that. So I do think that there's like, when I look at next year's playoff or next year's teams, I'm like, you could make a run for it. I think Florida, one thing I feel confident about with Florida is that I don't know if they can make a playoff. If they don't, like next year would make the most sense for it to be their first playoff berth, because the schedule is so much lighter than it is this year. Like we don't play Tennessee. We don't play Ole Miss. I mean, no, we do play Ole Miss. We don't play Tennessee. We don't play LSU. We don't play Alabama. We still play Georgia and Ole Miss, but we don't play Texas or Texas A&M. But like looking at that, like the schedule actually is more feasible for folks, the Gators, to make an initial playoff berth. Winning it, on the other hand, I just have to see how those games play out, because then you talk to me in September and they're 4-0. I'm like, okay, this team actually could probably win it all. But yeah, like I hear what you're saying regarding like dynasties, because if the only thing that could defeat it, though, is if Ohio State wins it all this year. And if they do win it all, that means they win.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I think I was like, I look back and I'm like, Ohio State, if they win back-to-back and they go undefeated this year, that confirms to me that we should have never expanded this thing to 12 teams, honestly.
Yeah.
And we probably should have went to like the BCS model or something like that, where it's computers and they being able, like there was more parity in that kind of matchup than it was the other way around. Like we saw all 5 conferences win a national title, plus a group of 5 conference during the BCS era.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing I was gonna say is that, unless I'm mistaken, Ohio State last year, if it was a 4-team playoff, they wouldn't have made it in because they had 2 losses. No,
That's true. That's
so
true.
that's the
That's
only
true.
thing. So it's actually kind of interesting now that I think about it, because like initially I had said it, it'll be harder for dynasties, which I think in my head I still think that. But like I just said, Ohio State wouldn't have even been in it last year if it had been 4, right? So maybe it will be easier because you're going to be able to at least make it maybe every
Hmm.
year if you're in Ohio State or a Notre Dame or something like that,
You're gonna get
when you
like
might not
second,
have made
third,
it
or
other
fourth
years.
chances. You're gonna get
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
chances. Like, I mean, look at Texas and their resume. I know they're probably not gonna get in, but
Yeah.
Texas has a really impressive resume. Like,
If
it's
they
like
didn't
they
lose to
have
Florida, they'd be in over the other 10-2 teams. Yeah.
another piece that is important also is just like what their argument now is like, we didn't have to play Ohio State. We chose to play Ohio State. You're right. They shouldn't have lost to Florida. Florida's a bad team. Like, they shouldn't have lost to them. But the fact is, now what are we saying about out of conference P4 matchups? Because now if Texas could have scheduled Kennesaw State first week and not played Ohio State, then they would be 10-2. So now we're talking about a 10-2 Texas team with 3 top 10 wins. It's like they're for sure in the playoff versus a 9-3 team that went on the road against Ohio State and kept it to a 1-score game. Like,
Yeah.
that is very different, right? I hear that, I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's a good argument, but that's a three. Can you think of a time where 3 losses, and we're talking about you competing for a national championship? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But
That's so true.
that's what the playoff does, and I'm like, that's my own axe to grind against the playoff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And I think like,
I will say, go
yeah,
ahead,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good. You're good. Keep on.
I was gonna say, kind of going back to the whole Ole Miss thing, and with Lane Kiffin leaving, this whole ordeal had made me really not like Ole Miss because of just because of how much smack they were talking, man. I don't know if you got any Ole Miss friends, but like, it was mostly on social media, but they was talking so much smack, and it didn't help that they beat us this year too. But the fact of the matter is, like, oh, Florida's irrelevant. What can you do at Florida that you can't do at Ole Miss? And I'm like, dude, I've seen my team win the SEC and the national title. You have not even seen your team make it to Atlanta. Like,
Yeah.
so kind of like keeping with this, I'm just like, I am kind of happy that Ole Miss kind of got dumped. Ole Miss definitely got dumped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I do think it would be a good own if they were able to go win the national title without him. I just don't have confidence that they can. That's just
Yeah.
me. Maybe call me hater, call me whatever. I'm just like, until I see it, I don't think Ole Miss can win one.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, bro, because like I feel like LSU is going to be hated a lot more than because I feel like, generally speaking, LSU is actually one of those teams that people like, even if, like, I think Florida, like LSU and Florida have a pretty bitter rivalry where I think like the fans don't really like the other school.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, like, because with like, for instance, Bama, like LSU, Bama, like, we don't like each other, but I still think there's like respect. Like, I think LSU respect, and it's partially because Nick Saban was there, I think, and obviously Nick Saban has an affinity for LSU, but like there was like mutual respect there, kind of thing. And I don't think necessarily that holds with like Florida and LSU, but generally speaking, I think people kind of like LSU, Like, people love Shaq, and like Shaq went to LSU, people love Joe
Right. Yeah.
Burrow, they have like a lot of character, like Flau'jae Johnson, like people love Flau'jae, like,
Flau'jae
there's
Johnson,
there's just
yeah.
now people like kind of weirdly hate Angel Reese,
Paul
but
Skeens.
there, Paul Skeens, Livy Dunn, like there's just a lot of people that, like, I think the LSU brand is in good hands with those people, and so I think people just like LSU. But now I think there's going to be a little bit more, and this is kind of what I meant about the LeBron thing, is that there's some fans that are like, the national championship comes through Baton Rouge. And here's what I'll say to that, because I know what you're saying is like, you could see, like, I see the blueprint for that. Like, I see how that could happen. Like, if Lane kind of does what Nick Saban. So a lot of people were saying they think Nick Saban really wanted Lane Kiffin to go there to kind of like finish what he started, kind of thing, like at LSU. Like, kind of like he groomed Lane Kiffin a little bit and is like, I want to send, like, it was kind of like, people were kind of saying it was kind of like Nick Saban's final like love letter to LSU was like sending them Lane Kiffin, kind of thing. And bro, it was kind of
That's
funny
poetic.
because Yeah, it was kind of funny because Lane Kiffin in his press conference, bro, like he was talking about like Pete Carroll, and he was saying how, like, Lane Kiffin's dad asked him to like watch out for Lane Kiffin after he passed, and he was like, your father would tell you to go for it, like take this job and go for it. Then he started talking about like other coaches that told him like, and then he kind of paused, and you could tell he was like thinking, and he was like, Nick Saban coached at another school in this conference, so I can't really tell you what he said. Because basically he was saying like Nick Saban was like loved LSU is basically what he was saying without saying it. He was like saying he couldn't say it because he coached at Alabama.
Right.
But
Right.
anyways, like the LeBron thing, right? Like I see the blueprint. Like when LeBron came to Miami with D Wade and Chris Bosh, he got up on the stage and was like, not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, whatever. And they lost in year one. Like they made it to the finals, but they lost in a kind of embarrassing fashion, mainly for LeBron because he did not play well in that first finals. I will never forgive him because he robbed D Wade of another NBA Finals MVP. Like D Wade should have 2 finals because D Wade showed up and balled in
Yeah,
that finals,
D-Wade did show up in ball, but Dirk
and
Dirk
LeBron
was
did not.
on a mission that year.
Yeah, but they were up. I think they were up 2 or whatever. Anyways, LeBron choked. But basically, what I'm saying is that they still had to figure things out. They still had to put in the work. They still had to, So it's like the blueprint was there. Then they won back-to-back championships, right? So like the blueprint was there for Miami, and I see the blueprint there, like where LSU could build. I definitely think they will be now a year in and year out contender for the playoff. Like I think that Lane Kiffin will do that, but I'm wary of like, oh, they're gonna win 3 national championships in 5 years. Like I don't know about all that, but I am excited. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think the offense is gonna be special. But yeah, so I'm excited, and I hope it goes well. And I'm rooting for John Summerall too because I like him. I don't like Florida, but I like John Summerall.
Yeah.
Hopefully it works
I
out for y'all.
will. I gotta head out real quick just
Okay,
because my wife needs the room.
got you. Cool. We can finish it another time.
Yeah, totally. I was just like, snap, my girl. I can hear her. She got a meeting and stuff. So
Yeah, we could do a part 2 to this.
I'm down. We can talk about
Okay, cool.
all that.
All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. We love y'all, and we'll see you next week.
Peace, y'all. We out.